So welcome everyone. I am excited today to have Tiffany Works here, and she's gonna talk to us about what she does in her day-to-day as a community outreach manager. And she's gonna talk about community outreach for inpatient psychiatric care. And I will give our introductions, our learning objectives, and then we'll pass it over to Tiffany, who will get to tell us about the work that she does. So a little bit of introductions first. My name is Megan Mitchell. A little bit about my background. I am the founder of Agents of Change Social Work Test Prep. We have moved into continuing ed, which we are continuing to grow, and that's very exciting. I primarily work with children, so this is very good to have Tiffany here because she works with the opposite end of the spectrum. She works with adults, and I do some work with adults as well, but primarily children and teens. I am currently working towards my play therapy credential. I do a lot of expressive arts with children. And fun fact, I am in my doctoral program at SUNY Buffalo. And there I'm studying supervision, ethical considerations in supervision, and multicultural diversity in supervision. So that's just kind of a rundown of me. And let me give you Tiffany's background here. So Tiffany is a licensed independent clinical social worker, and she is joining us from Alabama. And she earned her Bachelor's of Arts from University of Alabama, Master of Science in Counseling from Jacksonville State, and an MSW from Jacksonville State. She's been practicing social work since 1996, so she has tons of experience to share with us. And she was telling me a little bit before we started recording about the work that she does. I'm excited because she does a lot of networking and macro work, which is great. She has been the community outreach coordinator for an inpatient psych unit at a hospital. And she was telling me all the different connections and networking she does through this. She serves on nonprofit board. She's a reserve deputy chaplain with her local sheriff's office. Fun fact, she's a certified women's self-defense instructor. That sounds fun. And she also puts together a mental health conference in her community. She has a daughter, a son-in-law, and 2 grandpups. And she has 2 goats and a cat. So she'll have to tell us, that's very different than the city life I live here in Washington, D.C. And then in her spare time, she enjoys working in her garden and reviving plants in need of rescue. And we're going to give Tiffany a chance to tell us a little bit more about herself in just a minute, but let's get through our housekeeping. We have our learning objectives here. What are we going to talk about? We're going to identify and apply strategies for effective community outreach and mental health. Tiffany's going to tell us tons of ways that she is out there in the community. Develop skills for educating the community about mental health. When you're doing outreach, you have to do some educating of different people out there in the community. And then we're going to talk a little bit about when, we are busy doing all these different things, how do we make sure that we have some self-care for ourselves. I'm going to pick Tiffany's brain about her goats and her little animals there that I'm sure, and her plants, which I'm sure provide a lot of self-care for her as well. And then why is this important? It's important because we have to do community work in order to do the best work for our clients and our client populations. And she's going to talk a lot about the networking she has to do. And I'm going to pick her brain more about why is this beneficial? Why do we go out there into the community and talk about this? We're going to talk about mental health awareness and community resources and collaborations. I have yet to work in a job where you don't need to do community outreach. You need to know who's out there. You need to know who to refer to. You need to know your communities well in order to be able to provide that for our clients. So that was very long-winded, but without further ado, I'd like to kick it over to Tiffany. Welcome, Tiffany. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. So I kind of give the background, but tell us a little bit about what you do in your social work life. What is your current role? And tell us just a little bit. I know there's lots of things you do, but just give us the quick rundown about what you do in your role.
So I'm the community outreach coordinator for behavioral health services, acute psychiatric inpatient care in a local hospital here in my hometown. And that's a really long title. And in short, just to sum it up, it's marketing, network, very simple things. It's a lot of fun. I get to meet a lot of different people, see a lot of different resources, learn about new resources, and make friends along the way.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the makeup of your community. So you're in Alabama. How big is the community you work with? Do you also live in the community? Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
So yes, I do live in the community. Um, the community that I live in is it's not there. There are a lot of rural parts in this area, more in the county, but it is a micropolitan. If you've been in your MSW program, you probably learned what a micropolitan that has to do with the number of people in the area. So a really small town, but interestingly enough, the town that I live in is the largest per square footage area in the state of Alabama.
Wow.
We recently, yes, interesting. We're a riverside community. We have two local hospitals, both of which actually have psychiatric units, and oddly enough, I think is an advantage for us and the mental health community. However, there are some disadvantages to that because when we sometimes get referrals into our hospitals, some of those individuals are homeless. And
Mm.
unfortunately, they do end up in our community. So we have lots of resources. Well, I don't want to say lots, but we have resources available for those individuals. So um, the poverty rate is very high here in this area. We also used to have a steel plant and a Goodyear, and both of those shut down, which really was the heartbeat of our community. It was, large employment population, and when that happened, people started moving out of the community, and our census has dropped drastically over the last 10 or 15 years, which is also interesting. But with a new mayor in town, we're seeing a lot of different things happening, houses being remodeled, different things made available for the homeless population, bringing new industry into the area. So I do think that's going to be a great opportunity for our community and great for those suffering with mental illness.
Yeah, I love that you kind of gave us a little bit of rundown. It helps us understand better. So you have seen your community shift, it sounds like, right? There was industry there. You have to follow we had times where there was economic downturn. So I guess I kind of want to hear a little bit more about that. When the industry was there, what were some of the common things that you were seeing? And now that you said that the poverty rate is on the higher end, and now that that industry has left, what are some changes you have seen over the years?
So most of the changes that I've seen over the years are the homes that people, when they were employed at the steel plant or the Goodyear plant, very well paying jobs, and they lived in the community. And what we've seen is that they are moving out in those houses. They either didn't sell, they become abandoned, they're not taken care of. They're older, so we have a lot of empty houses, and that poses a problem when you have a large homeless population. Recently, our legislation implemented a new law regarding squatters, which we're hoping that that's going to help a little bit with that. With private property, homeless individuals sneaking into the houses that are abandoned. So we're seeing a lot of abandoned houses. We're seeing people who were making an average blue collar income here in Alabama to moving out or having to retire early. And obviously spending is not happening as much. And again, like I said, people have left so that they can go find jobs elsewhere. So our census is declining as well.
Yeah, and as someone that does community outreach, I'm sure this affects who you're targeting, what services you need to bring into the community or connect people with in the community. So, what are obviously, this depends on the person, but what are some different resources you would be connecting community members with that you think are important? I know you were telling me you're out there getting information, you're making sure that you're in the community, you're present, but what are some of the issues that you see in your community, and what resources do you use to connect people with those services?
So So oftentimes, because of the low employment rate, we have individuals that don't have insurance.
Mm.
So we have lots of resources available for that. We have an incredible family success center here in our hometown, and they offer free counseling, free parenting classes. We also have a Mental Health of America here in our community. The public library is amazing. That is a resource for homeless individuals to go. In fact, that's where they spend a lot of their time during the day. They can go and sit in the library, to remain cool. And so, there's a lot of posting of information in the library for services that are available. We have, we work very closely with our probate court. We have a mobile crisis intervention team that deals with individuals that when they are petitioned into the court for mental health services and they have to follow up afterwards, sometimes they don't have transportation or even the money to pay for counseling services. And when that's the case, this mobile crisis unit actually goes to them. And as I was talking about earlier, because we do have 2 hospitals with psychiatric units here, we tend to have a larger population of homeless individuals. We have food banks, we have churches, we have, mission people that are providing free services, free food, free clothing. We recently had a center open up that's an extension of a church where they have a closet for clothing. They have cots for sleeping or taking a nap. They're not necessarily allowed to stay over. And I think that's primarily due to staffing, and so that it can remain a free service for those individuals. But they have a food pantry, like I said, clothes, if they need to buy clothes, warmer clothes, cooler clothes, they can come wash their clothes. One little organization that we have here is called the Council of Community Services. And what that little organization does is not even a nonprofit. It's just a group of people that come together and they share about the resources here in our county. And what we primarily try to do with that is, again, network and share with each other what we know. Not always necessarily what's in our community, but what's in neighboring counties, neighboring communities, so that we can refer out. And interestingly enough, with my job, I drive a lot. I travel from central Alabama all the way up to northern Alabama. And sometimes on my drive, I'll see a sign somewhere and it'll say something Women's Center. I'll put the blinker on, make a U-turn, I'll go and see what it's about. And it's been wonderful because I've actually found places that we didn't know about where we can actually refer patients from the hospital when they need to go somewhere else, more, to carry on their care. So it's been that's a really good thing, is being able to find new resources that are available and connect other people with those resources.
Yeah. This is reminding me a lot of in grad school when I was in a community class and we had to go out into the community and drive around. So you are on the ground doing this work. I remember we were driving around, we were taking notes, what's out there, talking to people. So you told me that you are out there in the community. Why is being on the ground, talking to community members so important in a community outreach job?
In my opinion, I think it's important to be out in the community, boots on the ground, simply for that reason, to find out what services are available and what they provide, so that we as clinicians have a resource to provide to those people. Because there's nothing more rewarding in social work than being able to give your client, your patient, your consumer what they need. To be able to continue to get better, to maintain stability with their psychiatric or their mental health. So I think that's why it's important to be out there. And then again, to find the new resources and connect those with other resources, look at what's overlapping. Sometimes places have, it's only a certain number of people that they can take, a capacity of people that they can take, or they only take a certain type of population. Some resources don't even allow individuals that are on psychotropic medications to even come to their facilities. So that sometimes is a challenge, and being able to find resources that our patients can go to or other patients can go to and still continue to take their psychiatric medications is very important to us, because as we know, taking your medications obviously is going to keep you out of the hospital.
And I'm taking vigorous notes as you're talking because I have some areas I wanted to follow up on. You talked a lot about insurance and maybe patients not having insurance. That across the country is an issue, right? Of who takes insurance, who doesn't take insurance. How do you manage some of these challenges of if someone, your community member or someone that would benefit from services doesn't have insurance? What might be some resources you suggest, or who might you connect them with? There's tons of free stuff we know, but do you have some connections where they would maybe help them apply for insurance, or different types of connections that way?
Yes, ma'am. So in the hospital, actually, we have eligibility services, and these are individuals. They're not necessarily clinicians, but they're individuals that are very familiar with the applications for certain types of insurance, such as Medicare and Medicaid. So oftentimes, this population does not know how to apply for their Social Security, or maybe they have, and it takes so long to actually get those resources started. Here in Alabama, I would say an average of 2 years for someone to get their disability started, their Social Security check started. But we have eligibility services in the hospital. We also have a local VA agency that helps those veterans and their wives with their, getting eligibility connected, or service connected, or benefits connected. Again, we also have lots of free services. The mobile crisis, it's free. Actually, that mobile crisis team actually just met with community corrections here, because interestingly enough, with the probate court, if someone has criminal charges and they're in jail, they can't fall under the probate court here in Etowah County. They fall under a district or a circuit court. And so they have to go a different route for their mental health services. And so what that community correction agency is doing is teaming up with the probate court and developing a mobile crisis unit very similar to what the probate court has. So that's something brand new coming to our community. We have mental health court for those who have been incarcerated, and that basically consists of a program where they can go through, and if they do XYZ, what the judge says, then they get to come back after so long, go before the judge again. The judge says, okay, you've done great, so we're going to drop your charges. Their sentences are suspended. They come back in a year later, their charges are dropped. They've done what they needed to do. They've gotten the help that they needed. They've been stable for a while. So that's a really great resource that we have. So there are several things that are available. And as I said, with the new mayor that we have, the homeless population, that's a big concern area in our community. And so they're working very hard on grants for those things. I recently just coordinated, this is another interesting part of my job. I just recently coordinated with the VA clinic here in Alabama. They have something called the Phoenix Clinic, and that Phoenix Clinic, it has a mobile unit that will come into the community. And actually, in my hometown, this is the first time that they have came to a community rather than to a VA clinic. So we're very excited to have that. They're actually coming next week. This is a van that comes. They have social services. They have nurse practitioners. They also have justice services and it's open to all veterans, not just homeless veterans. So any veteran that has not been service connected or seen what services they're eligible for can come and, have some routine checkup and have some social services or case management services provided to them, and hopefully get them connected so that they can get their insurance. Oftentimes they don't know that they can get the VA insurance.
Yeah.
So,
And It sounds like this is an exciting new thing. How do you get the word out to tell okay, so this thing's coming, how do you get people to come? So you have this exciting thing coming now. How do you leverage those connections you have to say, "Hey, we have this new thing. Please come and utilize these services." Because a lot of times people don't know or, it's I'm not sure about how this would benefit me. So how do you do that? It's a little bit of persuasion too, right? In this job, like,
Absolutely. A lot of sweet talking, pretty pleases, cherries on top. Obviously, working with, places in the area, like where can we park it, and how are we going to get the word out? So, obviously, social media is a big part in advertising now. With the pandemic several years ago, that became a really big thing. That's how we communicate a lot of times. It's how we talked face to
Mhm.
face. So obviously social media is a way to get that I get the word out there. And I actually coordinated this through the Chamber of Commerce. They have a leadership program, and we have one day a month. We have Healthcare Day, Government Day. Well, Healthcare Day is coming up next week. And so as part of that Healthcare Day, that's how we got this. So with the Chamber being involved, they're going to put it on their social media. Also, the city that I live in, they're going to put it through their homeless coalition and put it in areas where the homeless population may be at any given time. There are certain places that we know where they are. Those
Mhm.
places that I was talking about earlier where they can go wash their clothes, take a bath. Also, homeless shelters, going to put up some physical flyers because we know that not everybody has access to social media because they don't have phones. They don't have an income, so they don't have a phone. However, oddly enough, I was recently able to get someone a free phone. I don't know if anyone's aware of that, but there are programs out there that help people get the free access to phones still. And so, the just the good old fashioned flyer, work, putting a flyer with information. And for me, the simpler the flyer, the better, because
Mm.
the population that oftentimes we're reaching, they just want to see where and what time and
Yeah.
what it is. Very simple, very bold, very simple. So I think that's something very important to consider when you're trying to get the word out into the community. Professionals, I do a mental health conference every year, so I have a very extensive email list. So shooting it out in emails, obviously putting flyers up where the trolleys are, in the library, in the courthouse, um, good old fashioned ways, but also the very modern ways of social media. So anywhere from A to Z, whatever works and however you can get the word out, just get it out there. If you've got a great content creator, an influencer on social media, great to have connections with those people because they reach a broad population. And I think that's important, to be able to network and know who those people are as well. Like who's going to talk about it, who's passionate about it, who's going to share it, and who's going to be involved.
Yeah, and I think having a dynamic plan, like you were mentioning, right? You got to have some old school, you got to have some newer edge stuff. It's really important. These are things that I didn't learn when I was in grad school that they didn't really exist, right? So it's just I like that you talked about making sure that you reach people in different ways and like a flyer, where, when, why, right? It doesn't need to be super fancy, have a lot of text, like where is it? How can they access it and why should they access it? I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, I know every year you do host a mental health conference. So tell us a little bit how long you've been doing that for and what is this conference? And then I want to ask some follow-up questions about it.
So this is my big baby. It is a love-hate relationship, in all honesty. I believe this is our sixth or seventh year. When the pandemic happened, obviously we had to put it off for a little bit. But when we were able to finally come back, it was packed. The house was packed. People were ready to come back into a real conference rather than on video. They were ready to see each other in person and, be in a classroom again. So it's either the sixth or seventh year. It happens every year in October. We usually try to do it the second or the third Friday in October. It is a day-long mental health conference, and we provide 60 EUs to social workers. And this is the difficult part, when you have someone who's doing a presentation, they're really busy, and we try to get speakers that don't charge. We're not trying to make money. We just want to be able to provide, lunches to people and have vendors be able to come, be able to give them the CEUs. So we're not trying to make any money. We're just really trying to get involved with our community and provide some education. And it's not just open to professionals. Obviously, community members can come, and I've had that happen a lot of times. But again, it's a full day, usually starts at 8, registration. You can do day registration, online registration. Getting the speakers is the most difficult thing, as I'm sure you know, Megan. Getting people to send you their objectives, getting people to send you their PowerPoint presentations so that you can get them printed and into the folder for your attendees. Getting those objectives in time so that you can send them to the different organizations, because what I like is a variety of people to be able to come to the mental health conference. So assisted living administrators, nursing home administrators, licensed professional counselors, licensed social workers, behavioral, I forget what the credentials are, but anyone with any type of certification, if we can get to their board and we can get them to approve the topic, I'd love to be able to provide 60 EUs to all of those professions, because we all collaborate, we all network, and we all feed each other, so to speak. We all work together in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And we all need to be able to continue with educating ourselves and continuing to learn and grow as professionals and do it together.
So I'm sure this is something that you're just constantly working on, right? People we attend conferences, but the work never stops to get these things up and running. How have you seen it develop over the years? So 7 years that COVID was in there, right? But how have you seen it change throughout the years?
So for me, the biggest change is, we're trying to get 6 people to talk about different things, because I have to consider my audience. I have school social workers, I have counselors, I have people that work with children, work with adults, work with geriatrics. So trying to get a variety of speakers has been difficult. And my biggest fear and biggest concern every year is, oh my goodness, I want this year to be better than next year. And so I've seen it progress, because people are starting to tell me what they want to hear about. People are starting to tell me what they want to learn about. They expect it. People ask me about it all the time. Are you having it? When is it? And we do set the date. We try to set it a year in advance so that everybody knows, maybe make the announcement there at the current mental health conference. But just through the years, it's been more difficult finding people to present, and people to present that don't charge anything. And also, people can get more things online now. That's a little more convenient. That makes it a little more difficult to get more people to come, finding the right area, knowing how many people are going to come. So it's transformed a lot through the years. And just when I think it won't get any better, and I don't have just as dynamic speakers this year as I did last year, bam, I'm there. So it is something that I work on throughout the year, and I'm always trying to put the word out there. Hey, if you know somebody that's a great speaker, a great presenter, I would love for them to come and speak. I'm looking for this type of subject, much like you do, Megan. With your continuing education. So just really working with it, with my connections and who their connections are. What do they say, the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon? If I don't know, I know someone that knows, and we can get it out there. The worst part of it is when I do hear about a speaker, and this happened to me the other day. Someone wants to hear about sports and social work. That's becoming a big up and coming thing. And someone gave me a name of someone fantastic the other day, and I was at a place where I couldn't write it down, and now I can't remember who told me and who the person was. So I'm trying to remember. It'll come to me sooner or later. So far, I have one speaker.
So you've really seen it grow throughout the years. What are just you don't have to go through everything, but what are some that you've really enjoyed that you got to come and commit and that was a big popular hit at one of your conferences?
So there is an attorney in a neighboring county, and he does elder and estate planning.
Mm,
And his topic never gets old
yeah.
because it is such a complex topic. He talks about how to get people into nursing homes, long-term care, things they can do to save their assets or property, and how social workers can be involved with that and help their patients or people. And every time I hear that one, I always learn something new. So that's a really great one. I believe I could probably have him back every year. He's my speaker that I have this year. Our probate judge, he's dynamic as well. He is a preacher. He has a PhD in psychology, and he's a probate judge. He was a law enforcement officer, chief of the local county jail. So he has a very diverse background, and he's a very dynamic speaker. So we've had some really great ones in the past, but those are two that always get really great marks on the evaluations at the end of the
Mhm.
conference, and two of my favorites.
I just got back from a conference in person, and there is something that's just for me personally about being in person at a conference and making those connections and something so for me, something that really fills my cup, right? Just making those connections, seeing those people. So this is just my plug that if you can still attend in-person ones, there's a benefit to that that you don't necessarily get in the virtual space.
Absolutely. And I think, making the in-person events affordable is
Mm-hmm.
something very important. And we do try to do that. We don't charge very much for it. We try, and just to charge enough for, the food or whatever we're going
Yeah,
to provide, printing of the subject matter, things like that. So definitely, if there's one affordable enough, attend it. There's nothing like that human interaction. We're social workers and other clinicians. We need that.
absolutely. And I love that you said that some of the favorites of the speakers were someone that's a lawyer or a probate officer. I always learn the most from people that are outside of what I do on the day to day because I don't know. We have the social work lens or the mental health lens, but I do not have any like right legal sense as that is outside of our scope. But I think when people can see that interdisciplinary, right? This is still connected to the work that we're doing, but it's not necessarily in my lane. I have always found that those are often very, very popular because you're just learning something new from a different perspective or a different lens that you're not familiar with.
Absolutely. And I think, practicing outside of your scope is unethical, but when you are able to connect with
Yep.
resources that can, like, hey, I know someone that needs this, refer, refer
Yep.
out.
And that leads me to a good point is building up your referral list. No matter you do this, right? This is your job is to connect to get referrals, but even as someone that is a private practitioner and in schools, you have to have that referral list. Everyone has their go-tos, right? Like you gotta just make those connections. So how has it helped you being in the community and talking to these people to have referrals or resources? Hey, I don't know this, but so and so can help you out, or let me connect you with this person. How have making those connections helped the clients that you serve?
As I mentioned earlier, finding place, especially on the adult psychiatric unit, oftentimes it's very difficult to find places that will take them. Like I said, there's places that won't allow them to take their psychotropic medications, or, they're a religion based
Mm,
organization, and the client, is not willing, to do so. We have to take those things into consideration. So being able to find different resources, more resources, and like I said, most of the places can only take so many. So
yeah,
if they're full and the patient's ready for discharge, we have to go looking at, plan B and where can we go next. And also I think, developing those relationships with those other referrals, like they know what kind of patients we're going to refer them. If we call, like we've developed really great relationships with people that they know what kind of patients we have in our hospital. And so when we call them with a referral, they're up there right then and there visiting the patient, talking to the patient, actually physically now we're able to do this, lay eyes on the patient and see, and we've just developed a relationship that includes trust. They know that we're sending them an appropriate patient, and they know that we're available to them if the patient needs to come back. So that's very important, building that relationship and that trust, finding new resources and being able to build that relationship and trust with them as well.
Yeah, and you have the unique lens because you work in inpatient. The hospital works with inpatient psychiatric. And that's always a question I think people ask. Who would be a good candidate for that higher level of care where outpatient's not appropriate? What are just some basics of who would be an appropriate candidate for a higher level inpatient psychiatric care in a hospital setting?
So really, there's three criteria that we look at. And first and foremost, are they a harm to themselves? Are they a harm to others? And also, are they medically stable?
Okay.
Is the reason that they're having these, psychiatric symptoms because of something medical? A lot of times with the geriatric population, we're dealing with, something medical. And so that's the three criteria that we look at. Is it medical, or are they harm to themselves or others? Now, sometimes harm to self is a little bit of a gray area, like self-neglect. Like, that's not necessarily saying I'm going to hurt myself, but, neglecting their activities of daily living, personal hygiene, things of that nature, not taking their medicine, house may be condemned, unable to get out of the bed if there's a fire in the house, things like that. So self-neglect can sometimes, depending on the situation, be considered, self-harm.
Or safety concern, right? Like,
absolutely. And then, of course, if they're court ordered, when this mobile unit with the probate court goes out, there's some, individual walking down the road, clearly something wrong with them, or something, out of that's not usual for them, going out there and finding them. They don't want to come into the hospital. Well, the probate court can actually court order someone to come in, and when they're court ordered, they have to check with us first to make sure they have a bed before they can do that. But that's another way to get into the hospital. That's another admission criteria.
Yeah. Something we danced around a little bit, but I wanted to ask you about. How has this community networking and this outreach work you've done helped to maybe educate the community or help let people know about mental health awareness and maybe reducing some of that stigma that I wish we were not in this place, but we know that there is still stigma sometimes around mental health care. I don't need to do this. This is a sign of weakness. What do you do in your role that way to bring that awareness and help decrease that stigma that might be out there?
So as my role, again, community education, sitting on some of the boards that I sit on, I try to sit on diverse boards so that that gives me the opportunity to reach different populations, from anywhere from, I sit on a board that works with children all the way up to geriatric. So being able to sit on boards and, they'll have little health fairs or gatherings at certain areas, being able to go and to speak to the community members and talk about it. And also, even for professionals, have this image of what they think the psychiatric unit looks like or what we do. And so, inviting them to come and take a tour, or like I said, when I'm speaking to the community, talking about what happens in the psychiatric unit. And, kind of putting a little bit of ease in their minds, so that if they're that person, that feels like, oh, if I go into the hospital, everybody's going to look at me weird, definitely expressing and sharing, the importance of confidentiality, that our ethical responsibilities as well. And I think, not to keep bringing up the pandemic, but the pandemic really exacerbated or even caused a manifestation for a lot of people who didn't know they had a mental illness, or either it manifested or it just showed up after, experiencing the illness at that time. And so we saw people that were coming into the hospital that probably would have thought, it's not me, I'm not going to the hospital. And so I think, now that there's a lot more people that experience what it was like to have a mental health challenge and getting themselves help.
Yeah.
I mean, word of mouth too, from just someone that wouldn't have ordinarily been admitted to the hospital or wanted to come into the hospital, telling other people, hey, look, this is what I did. And hey, it really helped me. And it's not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So actual testimonies from patients, as in any business, everybody will tell you word of mouth is probably one of your best billboards, your best advertisements ever. So those are a few things to help with the taboo and, getting people to feel okay about coming into the hospital.
And we're slowly getting there. You see celebrities talking about it a lot more. And I do think if anything good came out of the pandemic, it was that no one's immune to this, right? And it's okay to not be okay. And your brain and your well-being is part of your care. So just like you'd go to the hospital for a physical symptom, you gotta get the care that you need to be your best self with the mental health piece as well. So I'm so happy that things are moving in that direction and that it's not as stigmatized as it was before.
Absolutely. And just to throw a little plug in here, I don't know, Megan, do you know Jelly Roll?
Yes, I do know Jelly Roll.
Have you heard his new song, I'm Not Okay?
I have heard. And so like there's people just and I've watched a few specials with Jelly Roll and he's all about his community and all about being transparent. So that's the type of stuff I think that's going to maybe change some minds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we actually have a hometown. I call him a hometown hero. He does some kind of rap. He's also talking about suicide and mental health and things of that nature. So I definitely think we're seeing a lot of people who are very influential, starting to talk about it. And I think that helps with the taboo as well.
Yeah. So how we're gonna kind of end our conversation today is you are in your car. She's in her office right now, right? I was a home visitor for some time, so I understand that. I'm sure you're on the road nonstop. And as social workers, we're carrying a lot around with us. We are helpers. We're out there. We're trying to connect with people. How important is self-care? And I want to hear a little bit more about your animals and what you do for self-care and how you're managing a lot, right? And that can probably drain your battery a little bit. So from your perspective, how do you make sure that you're giving your time to yourself too?
So I love being outdoors and I love working with my plants. Those are definitely my outlets for sure. Definitely 100% my outlets. I'll go to Lowe's. I'll look on the clearance shelf and I'll try to find the ugliest little plant with one green leaf on it, and I'll bring it home and just digging in the dirt. I don't know. I think I saw something the other day, some quote about digging in the dirt and how therapeutic it is.
Yes.
And I really appreciate, the board, the code of ethics, adding self-care into the code of ethics, how it's mandatory that we take care of ourselves now. And self-care, a lot of people, have different definitions of it, and whatever works for you, I think is what's important. But I love being outdoors. I love going to the pool. So when I get to go to the pool, that's definitely a treat. It's not something I get to do every day. That's going to be what I do later today when I finish working. I'm going to the pool. I'm going to listen to the kids outside screaming and drown out the noise in my head. And then when I come home today, I get to water my plants and I just enjoy it. And I sit with my thoughts and I process my day and I try to end on a good note. So a lot of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Grounding works very, very well for me. 5 things I see, I hear, 3 things I smell, 2 things I feel. Like, just that really helps me bring me back to reality. It helps slow me down, and that's and I try to practice that very often. I probably preach it more than I practice it, and need to do better at it. Waylon and Willie are my goats. They're brothers. They have different mothers, the same daddy, but different mother or different daddies. Waylon Jennings, of course, he is a black goat, and Willie, he has the same color hair as Willie Nelson, and the same kind of personality as Willie Nelson. And goats are very interesting. They're very simple to take care of, very easy to take care of, and they are very social animals. So, I'm alone. I live alone. My daughter's grown. So for me to socialize with my goat, I can go out there and I can sit with them for hours and just enjoy their company. And they're quite loving sometimes, quite bossy and quite loving. Asher, my cat, he lives inside with me, and that's my baby. That is my baby. He snuggles with me, cuddles with me every night, and that just somehow soothes me. Some days, there's days where the only voice that I hear is my voice talking to my cat. Sometimes, like I said, that's the first voice I hear is, I don't have a conversation with somebody every day, and that is something that I do as well. I spend time alone. I'm around people all day, talking to people all day long, and so just slowing down and quietening my mind and just saying, it's okay to be alone. It's okay to sit here in the quiet and just take care of myself and to do something I enjoy rather than just work all the time.
Yeah, I love two things you pointed out. Being okay with being alone, right? That for me, sometimes I'm just like, my battery's low. I've talked to people all day long. I just want silence and like just don't talk to me for a little bit. And then I love that you said nature. Nature is healing. We know nature's healing and animals are healing. So you have really, it's when we say self-care, it doesn't have to be you go to a spa and you get a massage. Like find the things that you already do that bring you joy and
Right.
help you ground, and that you do on an everyday basis that will help you, like you said, drown out the noise, be without your thoughts, and help you compartmentalize that hard work that we do every single day.
Absolutely. And I think, just being able to put a spin, like, if I had a bad day, putting a spin on turning the negative into the positive, like trying to at least find something about the bad part of the day that, we can make good. Like, okay, well, this happened. Okay, well, I learned from it.
Yep.
Just, trying to find something good in the bad.
Yeah. So the last question I'll leave you with is what you do a lot at your job, and it sounds like you're always doing something different. What is your favorite part about your job? What's your favorite thing that you do that brings you joy?
The most favorite thing that I do that brings me joy is I've been doing this for several years. There's been a little bit of a fruit basket turnover to some of the places that I visit, but making friends with other social workers from different agencies. When I go into a facility, it's not, you have to work at building a relationship, and there's ways that you do that, and you want to get on their level and find out what's interesting to them. And pro tip here, if you walk into someone's office, look around their office, look and see what pictures are on their desk, what pictures are on their wall, and talk to them about those pictures, because if they're on their desk or their wall, that's important to them, and that's how you're going to get to know them, and they'll talk to you about that. So you don't always have to talk about why you're there in your business, right. And then being mindful of their time as well, because social workers are very busy. If nobody else wants to do it, call the social worker, get the social worker to do it. So I'm very mindful of their time. So I've developed a lot of friends, and it's great. Like I went to an event, a fundraising event this weekend for one of the nonprofit boards that I sit on. And it was great seeing some of my referral sources there and being able to socialize with them. And they felt like friends, not just colleagues or referral sources.
So you were saying that there's very rarely a time where you don't know someone when you go out into the community.
Correct. And that's fun. Sometimes I don't recognize people out of uniform, and, but they'll recognize me or vice versa. So that's that's always fun just to see someone out in real life, not just work. So
Yeah.
it feels like I have a lot of friends, you know. So that's fun.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to just let people know if they wanted to check out some of the resources and some of the literature that talks about community care, that talks about inpatient psychiatric care. We have those listed here. And I just wanted to wrap up by thanking you so much for taking the time to share. I love the work that you're doing. It is, I don't want to say it's so different, but it's something that a lot of people don't have experience with because they are doing just the straight clinical work. So I love to hear your discussion of how you work with the community. You're a member of the community. So thank you, Tiffany, for taking the time today to share your knowledge with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this continuing education course from Agents of Change. Want to earn your CE credits for this course? Visit agentsofchangetraining.com or the link in the description to purchase the course and take the post test. If you're looking for more CEs, check out our unlimited plan. You will get unlimited access to 150 plus ASWB and NBCC approved continuing education courses for one low annual fee. We're always adding new courses. Did I mention we also have 5 free CE credits available too? Check it out at agentsofchangetraining.com.